friends, Crystal here from Homemaking on the Homestead, and welcome to my channel. I had a very rainy afternoon the other day, and I decided it would be the perfect time to spend in the kitchen. So I decided to have a baking day and a cooking day, and I want to take you along with me for that. Last week, I think it was, I made a video on 7 frugal tips to save money in the kitchen. And if you haven't seen that one, I can link it up here somewhere so that you can see it. And some of my tips, I'm going to be putting those to use today. It's definitely a great time saver to be able to cook up more than one thing at one time, and when I'm working in the kitchen. And the biggest key is just to be organized before you start. Make sure all your dishes are clean and get the main things lined out that you're going to need for whatever it is that you're baking or cooking. In this video, I am going to be making some white bean chicken chili. A few months ago, I got an email from Anita, and she had actually asked me if I would make this recipe, and I just haven't been able to get it into my rotation until now. And so basically what I'm doing, she gave me a link to a similar recipe, but white bean chicken chili is something that I've made for years. So I'm going to show you how I make it. I'm also going to be making 2 loaves of bread. I'm going to be making a batch of brown sugar granola, and I am going to be making some corn muffins. Quite a while ago, I had bought a big box of corn muffin mix from Costco. I think they had it on sale, and so I went ahead and got that. And I was down to just having one left, and it was sitting on the shelf in the big box. So all I did was cut out the directions so I didn't lose those. I put the last mix and the directions into a Ziploc bag, so that would make it easy when it was time to make it. So that's basically the lineup of what I am doing, and I spent, I'm going to say, maybe 3 to 4 hours by the time I was done with everything and the kitchen was cleaned up. And I ended up with quite a lot of good food. The white bean chicken chili fed us for 2 nights still with leftovers. And I need to decide whether I'm going to put what I have left into the freezer or just hang on to it for a leftovers buffet. And one other thing is, a few days ago, I cooked a whole chicken in my Instant Pot, and I already have made one recipe with it, which was some chicken and dumplings. And so the chicken that I am using for the white bean chicken chili is from that whole chicken. And that was one of my other tips, was to always buy the whole chicken if you want to save money, because there is so much mileage in that, and then when you're all done, you also get the broth from the bones. So it makes it also another money saver. Okay, let's get this afternoon started. Since I knew the beans were going to take the longest time to cook, I decided to get those going first. I put in 2 cups of navy beans, or small white beans, and 8 cups of water, and I put in a teaspoon of salt. It is very untrue that salt will make your beans hard. I cook my beans for 1 hour because we like our beans soft. You can do less time if you would prefer beans that are a little bit harder. While the beans were cooking, I decided to move on to the bread. This is a new recipe that I had never tried before, and I have to say I really liked it. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to rise. It really goes very quickly, although I will say I probably let it rise a little bit longer than what the recipe is, which I have linked below. But it was a very delicious and easy recipe. When I make bread, I always start with the least amount of flour the recipe calls for. I can always add more flour, but it's hard when you end up with too much flour. And having dough that is slightly sticky is okay too. I just slowly added a little more flour until it had pretty much pulled away from the edges, and it was still a little bit sticky. But like I said, that's not really a problem. And usually if the dough is somewhat sticky, I will tend to put oil on my hands instead of adding more flour. The more flour you add, the more dense your bread dough can become. So I will just add oil, and that helps to keep it from sticking on me. I covered it and let it rise, and then used the mixer to punch it down. At that point, I removed the dough from the pan, and I also added, again, a little bit more oil to my hands to make the dough less sticky, and I kneaded it a few more minutes, maybe not even that, maybe a minute or so, before I cut the dough into 2 pieces. Then I just kind of shaped each piece into a large looking log and put that into my greased pans. And I just used coconut oil to grease it. You could also spray it with a non-stick spray, but you do want to put something in the pan, otherwise it will stick. Then it was time to cover that and let that rise until it had about doubled in size. I then took a couple tablespoons of olive oil and just brushed that on the top to help make sure that the crust turned out nice and golden. This recipe also called for putting a pan of water in the stove on the lower rack, and I guess that helps. The extra moisture helps to make a crispier crust, and it baked for 40 minutes. While my bread was baking, I went ahead and started my granola, and I shared this in a recent Homemaker's Journal, number 13, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here, but you can check out that video and get a few more details on how I do that. At that point, my beans were definitely done, and it was time for me to start working on the chili. There is the amount of chicken I had, which was plenty for this, and I still ended up with some left over. I chopped up my chicken pieces until I had a very nice, generous 2 cups worth of chicken. And I still have chicken enough left over for at least one more meal. Who knows? Maybe more. Then I went about to get my onion all nicely chopped up. By the time I had that all done, it was time to pull my bread out of the oven. And there it is. It really turned out just beautiful, and it does taste delicious. I will definitely be making this recipe again. And now that the bread is out of the oven, it was time for me to put my granola in the oven. And while my granola is cooking, I'm going to get my white bean chicken chili made. I heated up some oil and threw my onions in there and let those saute. I got my spices out: chili powder, cumin, salsa, a can of diced green chilies. That is the broth left from my beans when I drained them, and those are my beans. After the onion was done, I went ahead and put all the beans in there, which came to a little over 6 cups. So that would be somewhere between 4 and 5 cans of bean if you were doing it, but you really want the bean broth, so that's why I suggest making it from scratch. I added 2 cups of the bean broth and then went ahead and added my green chilies, my salsa, and my spices. And then I stirred everything up. I ended up adding another cup of broth. It's really up to you, depending on how thick or thin you like your chili. And the beans will make it thicken up over time. I then added my chicken meat, a little extra salt, the cheese, and I added in the milk to make it creamy. You can also add sour cream. It's really up to you. It's a versatile recipe for sure. At that point, my granola was done, and I pulled that out of the oven and gave it a nice stir. Put it into a larger bowl, and just so it could cool off there. Well, I attempted to put it into a larger bowl. I didn't want it ending up all over the counter. And then I added my add-ins, which were some raisins, dried cherries, and some chopped up pecans. Then it was time to make the cornbread, the last thing that I had on my list. And I just followed the instructions on the package and mixed that up. I then put my batter into my prepared muffin pan, and I baked it according to the directions on the box. And they turned out great, and we ate those that night with our chili. Okay, there you can see what I accomplished on this day. With the bread, I will always slice it all up and stick it into Ziploc bags and put it in the freezer. because my husband and I won't go through 2 loaves of bread before it would start to go stale. So that's how I keep that fresh. And the corn muffins are just about gone, and the granola we are continuing to enjoy for breakfast. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I really appreciate you watching. It means a lot to me, and don't forget to give this video a like, a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and you like my content. And I will see you all in my next video. Alrighty, bye-bye.